We can't trust our leaders anymore. We can't trust the process upon which the leaders are accepted anymore. That's why our industry exists, in a nutshell. That's why we do what we do. It's why I work on things like midnight, because I say, what could actually give you some semblance of privacy back with some reasonable guardrails and boundaries so that you can actually live your life? But you have to do your part. If you truly believe in these things, nothing the NSA or the federal government has done will ever compare to the amount of information that Google knows about you or Facebook knows about you.
Hey guys, today we will show you Charles Hoskinson expressing his views on Edward Snowden and the topic of privacy. He explains that as a libertarian, he values privacy and believes that the government should not intrude on personal liberties. However, he also believes that Snowden's decision to reveal classified information was not justified and does not make him a true martyr for the cause of privacy. Instead, Hoskinson argues that real martyrs are people who protest and fight for their beliefs even at the cost of their own lives. In the hypocrisy of the freedom movement and privacy movement in America, Charles argues that despite people claiming to value privacy, they continue to use products and services from private companies that collect and sell their personal data. Charles also suggests that people are willing to give up their privacy for perceived safety and criticizes Edward Snowden for not being a true martyr for the cause. Hoskinson concludes by expressing support for the blockchain industry as a way to protect privacy. Now we will take you to the video, but before that, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more crypto-related updates. Now sit back, relax, and let's see what Charles has to say.
For many years, I've been a staunch libertarian and preached the virtue of privacy and restricting the ability of the government, the US government, from intruding upon our personal liberties. I firmly believe we have freedom of association, commerce, and expression. And I see things like the government colluding with social media. I see things like the hate speech movement and these other things as basically just attempts to gain control over thought and expression and politicize it so that anything that's inconvenient to those who are in power is defined as the enemy and gets deplatformed. Now, I'm also surrounded by, as a result of us hiring lots of veterans and having veterans in the family, a lot of people have sworn oath to the US Constitution, and we're entrusted with the secrets of our nation and entrusted with the defense of our nation. It's not a light oath. Millions of Americans have taken it, will continue to take it, and a lot of people have died in the pursuit of it or suffered terribly, and in many cases were treated very unfairly. Now, everybody who holds a security clearance will tell you, you will see if you get high enough the food chain, you spend long enough in, many things that make you sick and are profound injustices. And yet you're expected to keep them secret. Now, Snowden is no different than that. He took the oath multiple times, one at the CIA, one at the NSA, and one, I believe he was in the Army. And each time, in his mind, he had a version of the Constitution that does not fall into the mainstream of the American public. Why not? Because the mainstream of the American public elected the presidents, the senators, the congressmen, and these other representatives. They didn't just appear out of the ether, they were elected. Now, his version of it, he said, well, I'm going to make a moral stance, and I'm going to tell the world what's really happening with the US intelligence agencies. Okay? And that's what he did. Now, there are plenty of martyrs in the world, massive amounts of them. Religious martyrs, political martyrs. There are people right now protesting in Iran. There are people right now protesting even in China. There are people protesting in Russia. And there's plenty of political prisoners, knowing full well that when they protest to call truth to power, they will be arrested, probably tortured, and spend a considerable part of their life in a jail cell. Now, if they ever get out, they'll be social pariahs as long as those power structures exist, or they might even become exiles. Some of them will be murdered. Some have already been murdered. Some have been disappeared, never to speak again. In our own country, if you look at the history of all the social movements, you have things like the civil rights movement. When people marched, they were marching against the law, knowing full well that not everybody was going to come home. Some people were going to be beaten. Dogs were going to be sick on them. Some people would be murdered, and the people who murdered them would get away with it. because the jury of their peers would be selected in a way to acquit them of the murders that they did. That's just the reality of social change. And the reason why we look up to people like Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King, the reason why we look up to Medal of Honor recipients, the reason why we look up to people like that is because they do extraordinary things, not really caring so much whether it hurts them personally. They're willing to forego their personal safety. They're willing to forego their freedoms, and they're willing to accept that they may die in the process of calling truth to power. Whether you support Snowden or not, the first thing he did after leaking our nation's secrets was he fled to China. Then he fled to Russia. Then he became a political refugee in Russia, and now is a citizen of the country, swearing allegiance to it. If he really truly aspired to be a political martyr, then why didn't he just reveal the secrets and go to DC and get arrested and become a political prisoner? You say, oh, that's an unreasonably high burden. Well, why then do we demand that for all the other people who call truth to power? Whether they're fighting repressive African regimes, whether they're fighting repressive Middle Eastern regimes, whether they're fighting Putin in Russia, whether they're fighting Xi in China, we seem to have this double standard where we demand that they stay. You look at Zelensky, he was offered a ride from Ukraine to Switzerland to flee the country and fight the war in absence. And he was told that if he stayed, there was a high probability he'd be dead in a week. And there were already death squads in Kiev looking for him. That's just a fact. He stayed. That's why we say he was brave for that. And whether you agree with him or not, you can at least say that he was committed to his cause. And my umbrage is there's a grand hypocrisy that exists within the libertarian freedom movement, the privacy movement. We all say we want privacy. And let me show you what privacy in America looks like. Hey, Google. Okay, Google. Phone turns on. It activates. You say, Alexa. Turns on. Activates. Billions of people use TikTok, Facebook, YouTube every single day. You carry a microphone, a tracking device that is owned by a private company everywhere you go. And all that information is controlled by private organizations that are not bound and constrained by the Constitution of the United States of America. And what do? They sell that data. They give that data. They transfer it to others with or without your consent through creative legal structures. Yet, every year, the new iPhone comes out. Every year, the new Samsung Galaxy comes out. Every year, the new watch comes out. How many of you say, I'm not going to buy that on grounds of freedom? How many of you are like Richard Stallman with Free Software and the Free Software Foundation, saying, I will only use open source, truly open source? It's real hard to get in contact with that guy. You have to talk to him over email with a server he runs himself, with software he wrote himself. That's the problem with being a purist. We want to have our cake and eat it too. We want to tell people how bad things are, yet we cling to safety. We say, well, we want a little bit. And how do we know this? Half of America was willing to succumb to wearing masks, vaccine mandates, and passports for public safety. Trust the science, trust these things. And even when things weren't as rosy as they made them out to be, or the science wasn't as clear as they made it out to be, they say, well, it is what it is, we'll still do it. These are nuanced, complicated issues. And if you're going to be a martyr, you have to bask in the simplicity and purity of going all in. You can't go half in, because what you end up doing is you damage the very thing that you're fighting for. Now, all the people that say Snowden, half of America gets to say, if not more, well, he's a traitor. By definition, he swore allegiance to an enemy of the state, which, by the way, has secret police, which, by the way, poisons its political opponents, starts wars of aggression, which, by the way, has no comprehension of freedom of the press. Just ask all the murdered journalists that are there. It actually runs an even more pervasive spy state than we do. but somehow that's a desirable alternative to live in. And then we get a reason, well, I was just stuck there trying to go somewhere else. Oh, okay. Meanwhile, go on the conference circuit, write books, have movies, be a celebrity whistleblower hero. Just doesn't sit right with me, because there are real martyrs, and I've met them, read about them, I've been inspired by them, I've seen them. They're few and far between, and they really are extraordinary people, because they don't care what happens to them. They don't care the consequences. They stand to remind us of our common humanity and the absence of it and the consequences of the absence of it. It's what makes them so special and so unique. The privacy movement has a long road ahead because the technology has gotten too good. We're surrounded by microphones and cameras and a pervasiveness that would make George Orwell blush. And there's not a lot of regulation or control over these things to protect your privacy. One of the reasons why I'm so deeply embedded in the blockchain industry is because it's the only regulating function that can actually give you a guarantee that what's on the label is actually what's in the can. If you're promised something with a blockchain, you get at least a basic guarantee that that's probably true. There's nothing in life anymore like that. We can't trust our institutions anymore. We just can't. They've become morally bankrupt. We can't trust our leaders anymore. We can't trust the process upon which the leaders are accepted anymore. That's why our industry exists, in a nutshell. That's why we do what we do. It's why I work on things like midnight, because I say, what could actually give you some semblance of privacy back with some reasonable guardrails and boundaries so that you can actually live your life? But you have to do your part. If you truly believe in these things, nothing the NSA or the federal government has done will ever compare to the amount of information that Google knows about you or Facebook knows about you. Nothing, because it's their business. And they've hired hundreds of thousands of engineers, data scientists, researchers to wake up every single day. They've built the world's most sophisticated artificial intelligences to wake up every single day and understand just a little bit more about you, because they have a financial incentive to do so, and no one controls it. That's the dirty reality and truth of the world that we live in. It's getting so bad you don't even own anything anymore. There are BMWs being sold right now where you have to pay a subscription to have heated seats, and if you don't, they get turned off. When you buy content now, movies, songs, these types of things, you used to have physical media, physical discs. You don't have that anymore. Guess what? They're now basically part of a platform. And if you get deplatformed, you lose access to all of your subscriptions. Book is inconvenient. It's on Kindle. You wake up one day, the book is gone. This is why the motto, you'll own nothing and be happy, is repeated gleefully again and again by the Weffites running around. Why? Because there's truth to it. People are walking towards a world where you can't even repair stuff. The right to repair? Look it up. You want to know why I don't like John Deere anymore? Well, it's very simple. It's really hard to repair this stuff. You can't just swap parts. It doesn't work anymore. Software prevents you from doing that. This is the world we're heading towards, a world where you control less and less. More and more decisions are made for you, not even by people, but by algorithms. It's an incestuous relationship between the private industry and the governments of the world. And in many cases, many of the smaller governments no longer even have the power to say no. They're told by a large global order what to do. That's the problem. And that's why the blockchain industry exists. It's why people are fighting hard every day, writing software every day, and deifying certain people who aren't martyrs, who benefit financially and haven't made huge sacrifices. It doesn't accomplish anything. It diminishes the movement. We don't have to have martyrs anymore because we are all living the consequences of this. We've all felt this. Whole world got shut down for 2 years and no one owes us an explanation for it.
And that's it for today. If you want to see the full video with Charles Hoskinson, check the description down below. What do you think? Is Edward Snowden a true hero amongst people? And will blockchain be a key factor in securing more privacy in the world? Leave your comments down below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. This was Investilence, and we'll see you in another video.